Whoever you are, with your veridical volition or subordinate psyche, hello. Like coffee, learning things about the universe, evolution, and humanity's place in both can be energizing to the point of insomnia. Like coffee, deep conversations keep me awake at night, shake me to life in the morning, and give me something to hold over lunch. Like coffee, discussing ideas and insights can be addictive, spilling out at work and at home, staining family, colleagues, and friends indiscriminately. In the last few episodes at least, I've attempted to blow your mind not with my own philosophical musings, but with demonstrable facts of science. Today I strive for nothing less than complete and total mind-blownness as we dive deep into the bowels of a person's microbiology to discover how crappy our personalities really are. It seems, like coffee, microbes affect a lot more than just our bathroom breaks. Alright, as a preliminary palate cleanser, consider the human genes that make up your genome, the ones that you inherited from your parents as a fertilized egg, are not the only genes that influence your body. No one is a sterile island. Every human being, from birth to death, is a seething metropolis of non-human life. The same way an ant colony, a beehive, or a human city can be viewed as a superorganism, collections of lives cooperating side by side to exist, so can every plant, fungus, and animal, including every person. Our own human cells are outnumbered at least 10 to 1 by the microbes that live on and in us. These approximately 10 trillion citizens of you are collectively known as your microbiota. It's time to learn to love them. No animal can survive long without its resident microbes. They're essential for manufacturing vitamins, calibrating the immune system, and providing a living barrier against invaders. All these bugs complicate oversimplistic ideas of what it means to be an individual. Compared to single-celled organisms like bacteria, the cells that make up an animal's body are gigantic beasts. They reproduce slowly and usually perform one highly specific task. Bacterial cells, in contrast, adapt to new environments and replicate themselves rapidly. For this reason, it's much easier to adopt a colony of bacteria to perform specific and different functions, as they can adjust themselves to fit a new role quite quickly. So far from being mere stowaways, bacterial colonies are often encouraged to take up residence inside a host with favourable conditions and more opportunities to reproduce in exchange for the benefits that they provide. Natural selection can then get to work rewarding the partnership as the interests of both parties become mutual. However, researching what roles microbes play in any multicellular community is not an easy thing to do. Many of the microbes in our gut actually die when they come into contact with oxygen, before scientists can work out what it was that they were eating or breathing. And of course, studying them up close while they're still inside a living person comes with its own problems. Instead, we can try to work out what it is that our microbes are bringing to the team effort by looking at the specific genes that they carry. Sequencing the diversity of non-human genes at play inside a person's body gives a far more comprehensive account of the bacteria, archaea, fungi, and viruses that we're hosting. The process of sampling microbial populations, blending them up, and listing what genes come out in the soup has become relatively fast and cheap over the last few decades. To a large extent, what's important are the genetic instructions that we can identify, not which species of microbe they actually come from. This is because bacteria have the remarkable ability of swapping genes with each other. It's a whole thing, and makes who can do what quite superficial. All told, the microscopic critters that inhabit us take the total number of functioning genes from around 20,000 in the human organism to over 4.4 million in the human superorganism. By this measure, you yourself contribute about 0.5% of the genetic instructions that run your body. Suddenly, claims that these teeny passengers might influence our diets, our health, and even our personalities shouldn't be so shocking. Bacteria are nothing new. We've been coexisting with microbes since long before we were human, before we were mammals, before we were even vertebrates. The oceans are thick with them, around 1 million bacteria per drop of seawater. Those we've granted residency aren't always quiet, respectful tenants that keep to themselves, nor are they all harbingers of disease and death. A rich microbial community can offer valuable perks. For example, why bother inventing novel ways of breaking down tricky food particles when we can just recruit specialist bacteria to do it for us? Whatever a large, complex, multicellular body might want to do, there's likely already a microorganism that can already do it better. As we've grown bigger and more complex over evolutionary time, we've become ever more hospitable to single-celled life, both in numbers and in diversity. In the same way that different animals are adapted to different environments on Earth, so every nook and cranny of an animal's body hosts its own ecosystem of microbes, all adapted to local conditions. Alana Collin puts this beautifully in her book 10% Human, where she says, quote, "From the arid, cool plains of the skin on the forearms to the warm, humid forests of the groin and the acidic, low-oxygen environment of the stomach, each part of our body offers a home to those microbes that can evolve to exploit it." End quote. Dense and varied populations build up in the choicest locations, like the intestines and urinary tract, where resources are plentiful. Hostile environments, like the lungs and stomach, attract hardier clientele. When we consider that the bacterial real estate up for grabs is not just the twists and folds of our innards, but also our outer skin as well, we'd expect some areas to be more species-rich than others. From our mouth to our feet, every inch recruits a distinct microbial coating. At the very least, this can offer a defensive barricade. With a range of chemical weapons that human cells can only marvel at, our bacterial bodyguards defend their patch, and us, against wild invaders. Think about it. If you were a microbe, being useful to some host may be one way to improve your biological fitness, as natural selection will act on all the genes of a superorganism, aka its microbiome. So your special skills might benefit everyone. But while bestowing digestive abilities or fighting off pathogens is great, altering the behavior of your host may tip the scales in your favor. It's well known these days that ants infected by airborne cordyceps fungus have their brains hijacked. Afflicted zombie ants will abandon their posts to climb trees. At a certain height, facing a certain direction, the infected ants will bite onto the tree branch that they're on and never move again. Over the next few days, having stolen the life of the anchored ant, the fungus grows out of its host's desiccated body to release spores into the air. Thanks to the ant's well-chosen final resting place, these spores drift down onto the ant trains below to continue the deadly procreative cycle. There's no intelligence at play here, no intention or comprehension, certainly not on the part of the fungus. Darwinian natural selection is all that's needed, promoting those parasites who can best manipulate a host's behaviour to propagate its own spores. Failure for the fungus means reduced reproduction. In turn, this exerts a selection pressure on the ants to defend themselves against cordyceps spores. Failure for the ants means death, and worse, a weakened colony. The multi-million-year arms race continues to this day. But insects are simple, right? Clearly, us brainy, complex, sophisticated animals have very little to fear from microbial mind control. It just turns out that rats infected by single-celled organisms called toxoplasma lose their fear of open spaces and become irresistibly attracted to cat urine. Unfortunately for the rats, toxoplasma can only continue its life cycle in the body of predatory bobcats, so it's evolved the ability to steer its rodent hosts towards predators. And, as I'm sure you know, dogs infected with rabies become extremely aggressive, frothing with viral slobber, desperate to bite another victim and spread the love. Clearly, real-life zombies were here long before human science fiction writers. As you may have guessed, humans too can fall prey to a malign microbe's spell. Whipple's disease is a rare bacterial infection that produces behavioural symptoms in a human host. Case studies report heightened aggression, inappropriate emotional responses, lack of insight, and general apathy. More common than Whipple's disease, though, is the bacteria Clostridium, which has become associated with various cases of autism right across the spectrum. It's teasingly suggestive that patients with psychological and neurological conditions are also prone to gastrointestinal symptoms. This might be a clue as to how the illnesses are getting in. We should bear in mind that antibiotics taken for a range of different infections can napalm helpful gut bacteria, not just the bad guys, creating a hole in our defences that invaders can exploit. There are other interesting correlations too. Dropping your guts in fear and the nausea that comes with true lust tells us that brains and bowels are intimately connected. And the communication runs both ways. The workings of our digestive system have the ability to affect mood and behaviour, as anyone who's experienced a hangry tantrum can attest. Emotions also play a huge role in sufferers of irritable bowel syndrome, or IBS. Everywhere microbiologists are looking, evidence is being found that suggests gut microbes do alter a person's mental health as well as their physical health. How? Good question. A neurotransmitter is a chemical that transfers messages between neurons, that is, brain cells and nerve cells. One such neurotransmitter, serotonin, helps us to feel happy, less anxious, and more non-aggressive. But only 10% of this wonderful stuff is found in the brain. The rest comes from our guts. Bacteria in the digestive system convert certain proteins directly into serotonin, to the extent that a diet lacking in these proteins has been linked to higher rates of depression. Microbes have been shown to supply a buffet of varied neurotransmitters to their human hosts. Not just serotonin, but also adrenaline, dopamine, epinephrine, and everyone's favourite, oxytocin. So we get why a parasite might want to change our behaviour, and we have a pretty good idea of how they do it. But why might a bacteria want to change our mood? To benefit themselves, of course. By rewarding us with chemical happiness for eating certain kinds of food, all of our trillions of gut babies are each casting their vote continuously, training us to seek out and consume more of their favourite snacks. We end up wanting to eat what they want to eat, creating something of a vicious cycle. fast food addicts will have fostered a fast food specialized microbial team. Veggies slip right past, delivering nutrients ineffectively with little pleasure. Committed vegetarians, on the other hand, can grow to dislike even the thought of eating meat. They've promoted and retained plant-loving microbes to the detriment of a flesh-eating community, without incurring any loss in health, fitness, or pleasure. Just like any ecosystem on Earth, the key to health and stability is in species-rich diversity. What's more, thanks to the generalist digestive plumbing that humans come equipped with, and the bewildering variety of bacterial species just out there waiting to set up shop inside us, a deliciously rich and varied diet need never conflict with the environmental and moral considerations of our food choices. There's always room at the table for conscience and compassion. Back in episode 11, we looked at how genes affect our behaviour. This was quite uncontroversial in my opinion, but it's now becoming increasingly obvious that microbes also have their say. Sterilised mice, bred without a microbiota at all, remain antisocial, or at least prefer to stick with other bacteria-free mice. The implications of this are huge. Could our microbes also determine who we're attracted to? Like neurotransmitters, pheromones are also chemical messages, but pheromones are broadcast outside of the body. Whether this is a disgusting odour employed to deter predators, or an informative chemical concoction used to mark a territory, or an alluring scent wafted to secure a mate, the molecules involved are often the waste product of the superorganism. In other words, the metabolic junk that's discarded by a bacterial community are often repurposed as an olfactory communication. This is certainly true of most mammal species, whose sex pheromones often are the farts of its microbes. Or, as the Grinch put it, one man's toxic sludge is another man's potpourri. Do humans follow this endearing trend? We don't need controlled scientific experiments to tell us that the unique smell of a person's sweat can be powerfully enticing or repulsive. But, of course, the studies exist. So-called pheromone parties, where dates select each other by sniffing anonymous t-shirts in bags, reveal that women prefer the aroma of men with a different immune system. As far as I'm aware, these studies have only looked at cisgendered heterosexuals, a limitation to be sure, but it's easy to see how partnering up with someone with a different immune system to yourself might benefit any subsequent offspring. Combining forces with someone who has the same immune system components as you would not grant maximally resilient progeny. So we're calibrated to consider such people stinky. This opposites attract hypothesis also goes some way to explain why, generally speaking, siblings aren't attracted to each other. Keep in mind it's bacteria feeding on skin secretions that conveys this message. So think of all the little voices you're silencing and the information that's lost each time you apply deodorant. I'm just saying. Screening the microbes of a potential mate might also be the impetus behind kissing. This is not just a human cultural phenomenon. In chimpanzees, mouth-to-mouth kissing and touching tongues are activities enjoyed exclusively by non-relatives. Kissing could have emerged as a chemical assessment of another's microbiota, genes, and immune capabilities. What other motive could there be, considering the increased risk of spreading disease? At least now you'll have a legitimate reason to be thinking of this podcast next time you're kissing someone. You're welcome. Remember toxoplasma, the parasite that causes rats to lose their fear? Humanity's enduring love of cats leaves us prone to toxoplasma invaders too. It's not in toxoplasma's best interests to get stuck in a human host, as very few people get eaten by bobcats each year. But should this single-celled organism find its way into a human brain, might it somehow alter the behavior of an unintended host too? Why not? Screening for infections reveals some striking behavioral correlations between carriers, including slower response times and reduced concentration. To a statistically significant degree, I might add. This is why people involved in car accidents are 4 times more likely to be entertaining toxoplasma. It probably isn't helped by the fact that for both humans and rats, contracting toxoplasmosis comes with a heightened willingness to take risks. Falling victim to such an affliction has been consistently shown to be a positive predictor of entrepreneurial activity and promiscuity, presumably because fear of failure has less of a hold over these people. And by these people, I mean nearly a third of the planet's population. That's right, at any given moment, 1 in 3 of us are likely carrying toxoplasma parasites. While reasonably benign in adults, save for all the car crashes, toxoplasma can be highly dangerous to children, appearing at a much higher frequency in those with obsessive-compulsive disorders, ADHD, schizophrenia, and Tourette's syndrome. Certainly, when we are healthy, we like to think that our virtues are the products of our own determination, that our relationships are tied to our character, and that our personalities are innate and unchanging. Well, balls. The profound influence our microbiota has on our feelings, whims, and our life choices should not be underestimated. While riding a bus, queuing at the supermarket, or sitting between 2 coughing strangers in a cinema, reflect on the fact that even our benign microbes are highly transmissible. Everywhere you travel and everyone you meet has the potential to alter you in some imperceptibly small way. This poses the million-dollar question. If you could remove the personality-changing influence of all your accumulated microbiome, who would you be? Gosh, these rhetorical questions are fun, aren't they? From life on us to life on Earth. Next episode, we're going to be entertaining the much less fun topic of mass extinction, and how human beings may just be the most devastating infection the planet has ever contracted.